I am called Abiola, and I grew up in the village of Isha, a small settlement nestled on the edge of the great desert. Isha is a place where the earth meets the sky in the most profound way. The sun bakes the earth during the day, and the winds of the desert sweep through the village at night, carrying with them the ancient whispers of the land. The people of Isha are a strong and proud people, accustomed to hardship, bound together by stories, songs, and the rhythms of the seasons. Our village was a quiet one, where the sound of drumming and storytelling could be heard from every home during the evenings. But there was one sound that stood out among the others, a sound that lingered in the air, like a secret. That sound came from Amina. Amina was the daughter of the village's chief, a woman of unparalleled beauty, known for her grace and kindness. But more than her outward beauty, it was her silence that intrigued everyone. She never spoke, not a single word escaped her lips. And yet, she wasn't viewed as mute, she was different. It was as though she had a deep connection with the desert, a bond that went beyond what any of us could understand. From the moment Amina was born, the elders whispered about her. They said that the spirits had given her the gift of silence, and that her voice would be heard not in words, but in the wind. Amina's silence, in their eyes, was sacred. She was chosen to communicate with the spirits of the desert. The first time I saw Amina in person, I was just a boy, barely older than 6. It was the day of the Great Harvest Festival, and I had followed my older brother to the village square, where the elders gathered to bless the crops. Amina, in her beautiful red robe, stood apart from the others. Her long braids swayed gently in the wind, and she stared out into the horizon, as though listening to something only she could hear. That day, after the prayers and songs of the elders, the wind picked up in a strange way. It wasn't just the usual desert breeze. It was as though the entire village could feel it. People stopped talking, and the music halted. For the briefest of moments, there was utter silence. Then, from somewhere deep within the desert, a melody filled the air. It was a soft, haunting song that seemed to come from the earth itself. Everyone looked toward Amina, who stood still, her eyes closed as though she was the one who had conjured the music. In the days that followed, the people of Isha began to speak of Amina's song. "It's the song of the spirits," they would say. "Amina is their voice." But no one dared to question it. Instead, they began to treat Amina with even more reverence, seeing her not just as the chief's daughter, but as a conduit for something greater than any of us could understand. As I grew older, I found myself fascinated by her silence. Amina was not like the other girls in the village. She did not laugh or speak with the other children. While others would run and play, she would sit by the edge of the desert, gazing out at the sand dunes. When I asked my mother why Amina never spoke, she would always say, "The desert speaks to her in a way that we cannot understand. She has a duty to listen, not to talk." I wasn't sure I believed in that. But then came the evening when everything changed. I was 17, and I had just returned from the market with my father. As we walked through the village, a strange stillness hung in the air. The usual sounds of conversation and laughter were absent. My father, sensing something unusual, pulled me aside. "Come," he said, his voice urgent. "Let us go to the chief's hut." Inside, the village elders had gathered, and Amina was sitting in the center of the room, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I saw the deep lines of worry on her father's face, the worry in the faces of everyone present. Amina's silence had begun to take a toll on her. It was then that I learned the truth. Amina's gift was not something that could be easily controlled. The song she carried within her was not just a melody, it was a force, a powerful force that, when called upon, would take from her. The more she listened, the more it drained her. "Her silence is a curse," the village healer, Mama Ifa, said gravely. "She must sing every full moon, but with each song her strength is slowly fading." It was hard to understand. How could something as beautiful as a song, as sacred as Amina's gift, be a curse? But the healer's words were clear. Amina had been chosen, but the spirits of the desert demanded more than she could give. The elders debated long into the night. Some suggested that we should take Amina to the mountain where the spirits dwelled to seek their guidance. Others feared that doing so would risk her life. I stood in the shadows, listening to them, but I couldn't help feeling something else, the desire to help Amina, to somehow ease her pain. The next night, I decided to follow her. I had seen Amina walk toward the desert many times before, but this time, I followed her from a distance. The moon was full, casting a silvery glow over the dunes. I followed her as she walked deeper into the desert, her figure faint in the distance. When I reached her, she was standing at the crest of a dune, facing the vast empty land. I called out to her, but she didn't turn. I felt a pang of guilt for disturbing her. I didn't know what to say, or if I should say anything at all. Then, to my surprise, Amina spoke, her voice as soft as the desert wind. "I have heard the song," she said quietly. "The spirits have spoken, and they have told me to listen. But I am tired, Abiola. I am tired of singing their song. It is a song of longing, a song of loss. And every time I sing it, I lose a little more of myself." Her words were heavy, like the weight of the desert itself. She continued, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. "I have tried to ignore it, but the song will not stop. It calls to me." I stood there in silence, unsure of how to comfort her. But Amina turned to me, her eyes soft. "I wish I could stop. I wish I could just be free. But I have been chosen, and this is the price I must pay." We sat together in the cool sand, watching the stars above us. And in that moment, I realized something profound. Amina was not just the voice of the desert. She was also a young woman, caught between her duty to the spirits and her desire to live her own life. The next morning, we made a decision. Amina would no longer be forced to sing. She would still carry the song of the desert within her, but she would not be bound by it. The elders, after much discussion, agreed. It was clear to all of us that Amina's true gift was not her silence, but her strength in bearing the weight of a song too heavy for any one person to carry. From that day on, Amina was no longer the voice of the desert. She was simply Amina, the chief's daughter, a young woman and a friend. She continued to live in the village, helping those in need, but she no longer walked the desert alone.